This past weekend, I had the privilege of joining many speakers and guests at the Cosmic Summit Conference in Greensboro, North Carolina, to discuss the mission and endeavors that Pillars of the Past has been doing for the past year. While the event includes voices across a vast spectrum of ideas and topics, some of which differ from my own views, I was nonetheless incredibly grateful to be able to share the work Pillars of the Past has been doing down in Peru, to share the forgotten histories, the real-world archaeological sites from boots-on-the-ground exploration, and the cultural legacy that is being lost, overlooked, and perhaps even hidden from all of us. During the Explorers Club panel, I had the opportunity to discuss my personal history and connection with Peru, as well as the evolution of the Pillars of the Past channel, its mission to document, investigate, and help preserve these ancient sites, and why it's so important. Just a brief warning, my presentation includes raw footage of ancient burial sites and human skeletal remains, so discretion is advised. I hope you enjoy.
Get to another maniac here, which is Raul, who I just watched your video. It's Perulan. I don't know how to pronounce it. You went out there for how long?
My expedition in 2024 was 23 days.
By yourself?
By myself.
In the middle of Peru?
In the middle, well, up and down the coast. The stats are, the expedition last year lasted 23 days. I went to over 90 archaeological sites. Most of them had absolutely no labels, no place markers, nothing on Google. I identified them using Google Earth. I got very good at seeing what I thought were ancient structures. And it got to a point where people online were saying, you're having pareidolia, this isn't it. I said, you know what, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And I spent my life savings. And in 23 days, I drove over 3,000 kilometers up and down the coast of Peru, making it to all these archaeological sites that I had mapped out. And you'll see I have some video clips. I'm up there scaling mountains, I'm crossing rivers, getting the Jeep stuck in the desert. I mean, it was quite the adventure.
It looked like it's a great video, though.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you have a little presentation for us
I do.
In an origin story.
I'm going to stand up so I can see what's playing. So this is I started this channel about a year or so. I feel very fortunate and grateful to be here at the Cosmic Summit. This is the introduction to what my channel is doing. So let's see if it plays.
And your channel is called?
It's called Pillars of the Past. And you can find it on YouTube, Pillars of the Past 101.
It's a good channel.
This is Pillars of the Past. Join me as I embark on epic adventures to forgotten and lost locations to reveal pieces of our ancient past.
Found them.
Using everyday technologies to map out what I believe are the remnants of ancient architecture, I'll travel to some of Peru's most remote locations. I'll navigate to places not listed on maps or official records, find ancient cities reduced to rubble, and others begging to be uncovered. I'll discover unknown temples, find countless artifacts thousands of years old, and for many of these sites, I'll capture the only modern media that exists of them. I'll be befriended by helpful locals, examine mysterious construction methods, and find undeniable evidence of catastrophic events. I'll stand in shock at savagely looted burials and capture what's left at sites that have been erased from the historical record. Imagine all that's still out there, waiting to be discovered. I believe there's an explorer in each of us, and I hope you join me on the next adventure. Nice. This is Pillars of... Thank you. So my origin story, I'm going to try to be mindful of time here. If you could let me know when, like, 7 to 10 minutes.
I got you.
So my mother is from Peru, and I grew up going down to Peru every year or so to visit my abuelita, my tío and tías, and my dad was very adventurous. So in 1997, that's a picture of me at Machu Picchu, and back then you didn't have to follow a certain path, you didn't have to stay on a trail. This was, 30 years ago, and so I went off into some caves that I found in Machu Picchu, and there was something in the walls, so I started kind of digging at it, and I found seashells in Machu Picchu. And that kind of blew my mind. I was, 10 to 12 years old. I was like, how did seashells get up here at 8,000 feet? That would start a course for the next several decades of me learning about the cataclysmic history of our world, about trade networks, and all sorts of, cultural connections down in Peru. That's a picture on the bottom right. That's my abuelita there. That's in the Ica Desert of Peru. Now, those mummies are actually in a museum, but back then they were not. They were just there on the desert floor. And as you'll see, not much has changed in the last 30 years in Peru. I remember going there as a kid and standing where all you could see for kilometers was the skulls and bones and artifacts of these ancestors that were living down there. Not to mention all the litany of ruins in Peru that have been that still remain unexcavated. So last year I began using Google Earth, and like I said earlier, people were criticizing my findings on social media, so I said, let me go, I believe in this, so I went. And like I said, the stats, every single site that I mapped out was an archaeological site. Now, to be fair, about 75% of those, or 75 of those 90, they did have a Ministry of Culture sign, so the government does know about it. Now, although the government knows about, there's just so many sites in Peru. Although the government knows about it, none of them have been excavated. Let me see what the next slide is. This is a geoglyph that I found in the Coral Supe region, and if the Coral Supe region is known as one of the oldest advanced civilizations in the Americas, there's no documentation of this geoglyph. None. I've reached out to Dr. Ruth Shady. She's the one who was responsible for the discovery of Coral. This is just some of the findings I've been making. This is a site called Purulin. This site has over 16 platform pyramid structures. The last time it was surveyed the only time it was surveyed was in 1970 by Walter Alva. So what ended up happening, here's another shot of one of the pyramid structures. And so there's like 16 of them, all in this area. And all my videos are on YouTube, Pillars of the Past 101, so you can see the full-length adventures. Here on the coast. Now, I know we have some geologists here. These could be megalithic, but at this particular site, this was the only place I found this, so I want to go back and see if there is other stonework like this. I don't like to claim anything until I have a bit more evidence or proof. But that's an example of the stuff I'm finding there that is unstudied. So part of the reason why this is important, so between 1900 and 1950, archaeologists or antiquarians at the time went up and down the coast of Peru. They were kind of looking for treasures, right? And so they would find these archaeological sites, kind of comb through them, jot them down, which is why the Ministry of Culture has them in their database. But then they would move on. There were no thorough excavations that happened. Over half the sites, I'm finding structures that are still buried. And the government just doesn't really have the money, the interest isn't, there's so many sites. When there's a site that might get some tourism, they do take a major interest, but also it's a hell of an effort to try to excavate everything that is down in Peru. But the reason why it's important, this is the thing for me. Even though those sites haven't been studied since the 1950s, 1970s, for example, Coral was discovered in 1948 by a guy flying over it. And it wasn't until 40 years later, that Dr. Ruth Shady did excavations there, and now we have what is the oldest advanced civilization in the Americas. So just imagine another site, Huaca Prieta. For the longest time, for decades, it was thought to be from 6000 BCE. And it wasn't until Tom Dillahay did more extensive research and he found the dating to be, and this is now academically confirmed, to 11,500 BCE. And I can't imagine the number of sites that have been overlooked that just had one brief survey, but then you have a team, somebody, as diligent and as strong as Tom Dillahay, for example, who faced a lot of criticism for his discoveries down in Chile and Monte Verde, finding these civilizations and finding the evidence through radiocarbon dating that these sites are much, much, much older. These are some of the artifacts that I came across on the 2024 expedition. I mean, this thing buried in, I still don't know what it is. The ceramic that I'm in, that is about a 1.5 inches thick piece of ceramic that was buried in the desert. And you can see these sites are, unfortunately, there's graffiti on a lot of them. I would say that, okay, there wasn't a single site that I came across that didn't have some looting. So unfortunately, looting is an incredibly big deal. This is an example. These potch marks that you're seeing, those are looting pits. And you don't fully see it, but this stretched for 8 full kilometers. 8 kilometers along the mountain ridges. And this is just one example of the looting in Peru. Now, when you zoom in on these pits, this is the type of stuff you find. That is a mummy. So when you go to like Nazca, the Nazca and Paracas region, the way they interred their deceased, they'd be in a seated position, they'd be wrapped with cotton, and then they would have textile wrapped around that, more cotton. And so here in the desert of Peru, and this is, I mean, I'm seeing this everywhere I walk. This is looters ripping apart those mummies, leaving their bones, looking for what I believe is probably precious stones and metallurgy, things like that. It's another thing I found here in the desert. This is one of many elongated skulls that are down in the Paracas Nazca region. And these things are just laying there, you know? It's another example. You can see there's some trash. This is from the drone. This is at that site where I showed you the aerial of the looting. I climbed up on the ridge, and this is what I was finding. So there's so much history consistently being lost. So this is a problem. The other big problem in Peru, I got to talk about it. I've identified over a dozen sites that, so you can see on the left is satellite imagery from 2017. In the middle is satellite imagery from 2024. And then when I went in 2024. So agricultural expansion is, I mean, I know in this community, we're very familiar with the destruction that was happening at Göbekli Tepe, for example. I mean, this here is the complete erasure of archaeological sites. This is just 4 of the dozen that I found. It's happening everywhere. There is no government oversight. This isn't, from what I personally witnessed, this wasn't local farmers, just trying to expand what they're doing. This was corporate agricultural expansion, which is so problematic and the government cannot monitor all these sites. So it is my firm belief that they're not even aware that this is going on, and the thing I think about that number one, we all lose whatever cultural heritage was there. There's not going to be any documentation of it ever. And, from what we know about alignments, for example, you have a site here, you have a site there, you have a site there. Well, maybe you take a step back. Maybe there's some astronomical alignment. But the way things are happening, we're never going to be able to figure that out anymore. So the Pillars of the Past mission is to document, investigate, and try to help preserve. And trying to go through preservations with the government. I mean, look, I had this idea once that perhaps you hire some local who lives there, and if he sees some bulldozers coming in, to then, call somebody up in the government to, come keep tabs on these archaeological sites. But the truth is, a lot of this stuff is run by the cartels and companies. They're going to pay that farmer a whole lot more than the government's going to pay them to oversee this stuff. Plus, these cartels and the agricultural expansionists, things have become very violent in Peru when they're trying to take, in one of my videos, I talk about Dr. Ruth Shady, one of Peru's most famous archaeologists. She was shot by land traffickers at the archaeological site of Corral when they were trying to bulldoze one of the pyramids there. So the Pillars of the Past mission to document these sites is to catalog them, These sites need reevaluation. Eventually, I'm hoping to drum up enough interest, enough funding from outside sources to be able to carbon date some of these things, to preserve some of these skulls and keep them in museums. I actually asked Brian Forster when I was in the desert, and I sent him a picture of the skull that I found, and I was like, should I take this to a museum? What do I do? And he said, not down in Ica, man. They have so many of them already. They don't need it. So I covered it back up, and I just left it, and just imagine how much stuff is out there. So the goal of Pillars of the Past, this is going to be next month that I'm planning to release this on pillarsofthepast.com, where basically people like us here on stage, people like you, can go on Pillars of the Past and have access to a map. And on that map, if you see something you think might be an archaeological site, create a pinpoint, put it on the map. And then if this person over here has been to that place and has pictures or photos of it, or just has a comment or an opinion, he can put that on your pinpoint on the map. You can use this map to, these are some new features we're rolling out using artificial intelligence, but to calculate what location, what is its proximity to a water source, what's its proximity to the nearest archaeological site. So you can start to create a better vision of the cultural history that is down there. And then, say we have some academics or some enthusiasts or, alternative researchers. If you have some papers on some of these sites, well, the whole point of this is to start a community where we can all pool together our investigations, our knowledge, and our research to start documenting as much as we can. And really, because at the end of the day, many of these sites are not going to exist. The way things are going, many of these sites aren't going to exist in the future. And ideally, I'm hoping to take another expedition later this year. That was my inaugural expedition last year. I know a lot more about how to film things better, how to get better drone shots. Eventually, what I would like to do is kind of what we saw in Hugh Newman's presentation yesterday with the 3D imaging, where if you can't make it to some of these sites, but you want to actually walk through it, well, I want to provide you a 3D model to do that. Put on a headset or something like that so you can experience these sites. I don't know everything. I'm only one guy going out here and doing this. So this is a community effort, and part of the goal of Pillars of the Past is to involve as many people as possible as we can. So this is some of the 3D artifacts that you'll be able to see on the site when it launches. And you can find me on all the social media platforms. So I'm Raul Bilecki, and that was Pillars of the Past.
Well done. Well done, Raul. Well done. That is really cool. I'm going to go down that rabbit hole tonight for sure. Some more.
You can sign up today on pillarsofthepast.com to be one of the first people who has access to these new features as they are rolled out. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm releasing a new adventure video in the next few days, so I'm excited to hear what you all have to say about that. Also, please like and share this video with anyone you think might find it interesting, and definitely leave a comment if anything stood out to you from my presentation. To help support a 2025 expedition for Pillars of the Past to go back into Peru and document even more unknown or little known archaeological sites, there's a GoFundMe link and it'll be in the description below. Every little bit helps, and your support really does matter, and I thank you for it. Again, thank you so much to the Cosmic Summit for allowing me the opportunity to present the work that Pillars of the Past is doing down in Peru. It was an amazing conference full of interesting people and a vast array of topics and ideas, and if you're interested in any of them, there's a discount code below to be able to see some of the videos on demand. As always, thank you for watching, thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next video.